You're live and direct, Pablo. It's all yours from here.
Oh, well, it's always a pleasure to be here on Gem FM, based in Canada, really, because just this week, someone met me in St. George's and asked me that question. You have your own operation now? And I had to explain to them that Gem FM is based in Canada, you know? So this is Raphael Pablo on John Kelly's Gem FM radio, online streaming based in Canada. And as you can see, my guest just came online there, and I'll be introducing her shortly. And I guess many of you who have already joined us are used to the comfort zone, being on Gem FM every Saturday afternoon at this time. We are a few minutes behind our scheduled time for the conversation with our guests, with our guest today. There are times when we have guests, but today we have one guest in the person of Miss Herricia Willis, and we'll be introducing her officially very shortly. But I want to start off by saying this program is called The Comfort Zone. And the introductory song says, get out of your comfort zone. Because many of us Grenadians are in a comfort zone. We are in our comfort zone. And we seem to be okay with the situation as it is. And we are not inclined to appreciate or to contemplate anything that is not within our comfort zone. But we have to understand that although something may be okay for us within our comfort zone, it is not ideal and adequate for the comfort zone, which is that place where the country as a whole can benefit. That place where the country as a whole can grow. And many people are in their comfort zones, and they are comfortable with their comfort zones. But enjoying their comfort zone, while they are enjoying their comfort zones, we are experiencing many things happening that is not comfortable for our country. And that's the reason why today the focus of the conversation is the issue of money laundering and the kind of effect that it can have on small developing economies like ours. Because we tend not to be able to relate some of those issues that appear to have these international and broader perspectives and bearings, and not to appreciate how it can impact directly on our livelihoods, how it can impact directly on the ability of our government to provide the services that we rely on from the administration of the day, how it can impact on our health services, how it can impact on the economy as a whole, your ability to get jobs, the productivity level of the country. We tend not to appreciate these things. So we are going to endeavor here today, we are going to share with you here today issues relating to money laundering, so you can see the relationship between that issue of money laundering. What is money laundering? What does it entail? And how it can impact on your day today livelihood. At this point in time, we take a short break with a song called From the Mighty Sparrow. Yes? And it's called Good Citizens. When we come back, we shall commence our conversation with our special guest for today, Miss Herricia Willis.
When does someone really become a good citizen? I'd like to know for sure. Why, when the ordinary man disagrees with the establishment, they call it treason. Why should they persecute a brother for seeking black power? Don't they know a blind man could see that this is blatant hypocrisy? The real traitors and them are all high in society. Yet the government protecting all of them and penalizing you and me. And in a million different ways they violate the law. It's the same good no good bastards who oppress the poor. They sell in black market, making excess profit, paying a starvation salary. These good citizens are the architects of economic slavery. They say you have the right to criticize, but then you are victimized. And without any reason. Many a time you find yourself politically paralyzed by that same good citizen. Yet these fakes and phonies enjoy a long life of luxury while they spread corruption throughout the country. When they should be arrested for respected in the society and in a million different ways. It's the same good no good bastards who oppress the poor. With a false declaration, tax evasion, defrauding customs duty.
These good citizens are the economic slavery. Yes, these good citizens, yes, and we don't cut it here and get into the program. Yes, these good citizens are the architect of economic slavery, because the conversation we are going to get into later on really speaks to that issue of these good citizens, people in their jacket and ties, the people who, not you, Brother John, not you, not you. You don't fall in that category. Talking about those people who they call white collar criminals.
Yes. I know. That's trying to be dramatic here.
Because, we're imprisoning those guys. And yes, they are distressing people. They go in your property. They conduct what we call predial larceny, take your coconut, take your produce, and so. But then we have people who are stealing millions of dollars, defrauding people millions of dollars, and not having to pay for it. They're escaping because of the connections and so on. So we are going to be delving into the whole issue of money laundering and so on. But before we get to that, I want to give my guest an opportunity to introduce herself, to say welcome to Miss Herricia Willis, and to say how pleased I am to be able to introduce you and to the platform of GEM FM and to the home of the Comfort Zone. I hope you are feeling comfortable being here this afternoon. Good afternoon, Miss Willis.
Good afternoon, Mr. Paul and Mr. Callis. Thank you very much for inviting me on your show.
Yes. To get started, I know you have been on GEM FM before, but that would have been in a different dispensation, dealing with a different issue on a different talk show. And some of the guests who are likely to be here this afternoon may not have experienced you before, encountered you before. Just in a nutshell, just tell us, who is Miss Herricia Willis?
Thank you, Mr. Paul. Well, Herricia Willis, well, first of all, of course, you're pronouncing my name how it's spelled, but we're all Caribbean people. Yeah. And our names are unique to us, except for Mr. John Callis. Well, my name is pronounced Herrica.
Herrica, okay.
But it's spelled Herricia.
All right. All right. Thank you for the correction.
No problem at all.
So that being said, tell our listeners, who is Herrica Willis?
Well, Herrica Willis, she is a lawyer.
Okay.
She is a solicitor from the UK. You can hear my voice. I was educated in the United Kingdom, in England. I was born in Jamaica, and I've returned back to the Caribbean. First of all, I returned back to my country of birth, Jamaica, and I'm now in the lovely country of my husband, where I'm now working and living, Grenada, of course.
Okay.
In the UK, I was a solicitor of the Supreme Court of England and Wales, where I specialized in financial crime for over 20 years. Financial crime is something that's overtaken the world in the past, say, 30 years. I am now, as I've said, working in Grenada, but I'm working as an attorney at law. Still a lawyer, but in a different sphere.
Okay. All right. We are going to be getting into that aspect of things right now. After my technical operator play me this clip. It's a clip from another show that you did, where you made certain comments. It's a clip that I call Barristers and Solicitors. So if my technical operator can play that clip,
in the UK, you have solicitors and barristers.
Barristers and solicitors. We get a sense of that.
In the UK, you have solicitors and barristers. The profession is split. You have solicitors who deal mainly with the clients. Barristers are there to argue the law. They spend most of the time at the court. They very rarely spend a lot of time with the client. Some barristers never meet the solicitor's clients, or they probably just meet them 6 weeks or even 3 months before trial. But as I was saying, a solicitor, well, a client would come first to the solicitor. The solicitor would take on the matter, do most of the investigative work, put the case together. And if the matter goes to court and there needs to be arguments on the law, so a barrister is basically an advocate of the court. They're there before the judge, takes instructions from the solicitor on behalf of the client. So there's a separation there between the lawyers, because a barrister and a solicitor are both lawyers, but they deal with clients at different stages.
The barrister and the solicitor are both lawyers, but they deal with crimes on a different stage. Many of us in Grenada, we're used to, okay, I go to a lawyer, go to an attorney, and you know that's what we understand. Can you just elaborate a bit more on that so that people can get an appreciation of these distinctions that you just referred to?
Right, I'd love to. What you heard there, I was explaining the difference between barrister and solicitor. Certain countries, Canada, Australia, the United Kingdom, we have solicitors and barristers. Both lawyers, but the profession is separated. You have a solicitor who deals with a client. A solicitor is regulated by the Solicitors Regulatory Authority, and they come under the Law Society. Well, you have barristers, which they are advocates of the court. They argue the law. They're there to develop the law. So and I'm talking now specifically about the UK, a solicitor would have their office on the high street, just like you would do in Grenada. A client would come to the office and deal with the solicitor. The solicitor would do most of the work, and when the case is ready to go to court, the solicitor would appoint a barrister. You mentioned that a barrister would meet a solicitor 3 months, 6 weeks. Sometimes the has no connection with the client. Sorry, are you hearing me? My machine says the internet is unstable.
Yes.
So basically,
yes, we're hearing you, but there has been a bit of distortion. So, but go ahead, we're hearing you.
So a barrister would mainly be in the court arguing the case. So there's a separation. In the Caribbean, America, countries like that, you have attorneys at law. Basically there, the duties of a solicitor and barrister are together. Okay. And the attorney at law takes instructions from the client all the way through, and at the trial stages, the court stages, the attorney at law would attend court and be an advocate and argue the case before the courts.
Okay.
So basically there's 3 different functions. They're all lawyers, attorney at law. There's a fusion of the barrister and the solicitor together.
Okay. Okay. Wow.
So that way, the barrister could argue the law more. The solicitor would spend the time with the client. That is why a solicitor can be sued. A client can sue a solicitor for negligence and so forth, but not a barrister.
Okay.
A client can sue an attorney when they are dealing with them as an attorney, but not as an advocate of the court. In Grenada and some countries that have attorneys at law, some attorneys prefer to work with the client and then appoint another attorney to argue the case. In those cases, the attorneys that are arguing the case cannot be sued. But the attorney who's dealing with the client can be sued.
This is rather interesting because time and again, we do hear clients having that concern, clients who would have gone to an attorney to take care of whatever matter. And there's some discrepancy in the way, matters have been dealt with. You hear people speaking about they not having any recourse, as regards some, the treatment that they would have received or some concern that they would have as to the way in which the attorney would have treated with an issue. Sometimes you've even heard about, people having concerns with that, the kind of interest, that there is some discrepancy with conflict of interest. And that's a concern that you hear from time to time that's being raised here. Because one of the things too, you hear people speak about attorney, that person, they've never gone before the court. That person, they say they're a lawyer, but they've never gone before the court and so. And what you're saying here, you really bringing to the fore that there are people, there are attorneys, there are legally trained people who have specific responsibility for doing the research, bringing all of the information together. And then there's someone else who's responsible for taking the matter to court and so on. We tend not to appreciate the difference between the two. So I hope that the explanation that you gave here would tend to enlighten people a little more. Anything else that you want to say on that particular issue?
Well, that is very, very important because all professions have bodies that regulate them. And I think this is a matter of education, educating the public on how the profession works.
Okay.
Because the law profession is like any other profession. They have standards.
Okay. Speaking of that and the law profession and standards and so on, different institutions that govern it, I want to play this clip where you spoke about legal executive. All right, so if my technical operator can play this clip, then we'll have a conversation about that component of things because that's new to me.
A legal executive, they're regulated by their own association, which is the Institute of Legal Executive. But the Law Society is the umbrella for the Institute of Legal Executives. Okay? Legal executives, they specialize in subjects. So as a legal executive, which I started off, a lawyer. And as a legal executive, I am qualified to specialize in 10 different areas of law.
Legal executive, specialized in 10 different areas of law. Can you just expound on that for us, please? What are the, just giving us the broad headings and so that we can have an appreciation of it.
Right, I think the word legal executive is new to Grenada and Grenadans. In Grenada, you hear about lawyers, you hear about paralegals, but you do not hear about legal executives. A legal executive is a lawyer. They are qualified to open office and to conduct specific areas of law. In the UK, there are quite a few legal executive offices that deal mainly with real estate, they call it this side of the world, which is conveyancing, property law. Legal executives also specialize a lot in family law. They specialize in criminal law and other specific areas. They can open office with other lawyers. For example, a solicitor. A legal executive started life off as a managing clerk who would manage a solicitor's office. But in the early 60s, the Law Society, who at one time regulated solicitors, but now solicitors are members of the Law Society, they recognized legal executives as lawyers, and they specialized in specific areas of law. So you would take exams, and they are at degree level, although they're diplomas. So you take exams in that particular area and work and own all your skills into that area. As I've said to you before, I was a financial crime lawyer. I worked for the UK government. In particular, it is known now as the Financial Services Authority. And as a government lawyer, I specialized in financial crime. But I'm a people's people, and I would work also for legal aid clinics and work in the inner city areas where I suppose this side of the world would class them as ghetto areas. But then saying that, we always, this side of the world thinks it's just our kind, but no, there's a mixture of different races you would work for on a pro bono, on a free basis. And I specialized in those subjects and would work there, as well as my day job with the government.
Okay.
So basically, as I've said before on that clip, in the UK, you have different lawyers, because a lawyer is a person that works in the law. It's not just honed in on barristers, solicitors, and attorneys at law.
Okay.
There are in England legal executives that have practiced in these particular areas, and I was one of them.
Okay. I don't know. I know that my technical operator slash co-host has legal training, and I don't know if he would like to come in here, if there's anything that he would like to add or anything that he would like to ask. Mr. Kellis, what say you? Any input that you would like to make at this juncture? Your mic is off.
I'm very much interested more in the aspect of the financial crime.
Okay.
You know,
I know.
I'm awaiting this. I mean, I studied constitutional law in Canada.
Okay.
I spent 2 years doing this. However, I'm very mindful of the different stuff that you talk about there. And a lot of times people go to a lawyer, as you mentioned, and they say, like you said it, that they may not have gotten the due from the lawyer, but probably have been to the wrong person. And some lawyers, because it's money, they don't say anything. So they take the case and they really cannot do anything for the client. They'll wait on a lawyer who will argue the case. And if people look at a court, like those big cases and them, like O.J. Simpson cases, there was one who just in the background supplying information. They gather information on the ground to supply to the one who will argue the case for Johnny Cochran. You know, so he actually you know this. So all of that. So there's backup people, like the lawyers, those attorneys, right? They prepare all the paperwork and the barristers, the solicitors. They go there and do argue for the client, like Johnny Cochran was doing. So a lot of people need to know that. I'm glad we do that. I hope we could do that another time again. But I'm really interested because in Grenada, there's something that is a nuance in Grenada, where money laundering is becoming a concern for many people. That's why they set up the FIU, right? The financial, FIU?
The financial
FIU, Financial Intelligence Unit.
Financial Intelligence Unit.
Yeah. So that I'm very concerned about. I want to hear more about what she's doing in that aspect and how that is going in Grenada, because I was sharing about the SUSU in Grenada also being watched as a financial area where money laundering could take place too. Because where you have been something for the poor people doing their stuff to raise their funds, other people might use that as an opportunity to launder money as well. You know, like, so the big people come in Grenada and say, well, this is something really neat. You know, I could use that as a way of laundering my money through SUSU. So how does the law, that unit, handle SUSU compared to other financial crimes that take place in?
All right, so we are going to get to that, but let's get to the foundation of how this issue came to the fore.
Yes.
Now, something that happened, because I'm always posting stuff, and I came across this article that spoke about money laundering and the way in which some of these white-collar crimists are positioning themselves to use, and we've heard a lot about our CBI program, right? And how people are positioning themselves to use that as an avenue to do money laundering. And I shared that article online. I shared it with some people on Facebook Messenger. And one person responded and said, well, why don't you speak to this lady? Because she worked in that unit in the British system for many years. So have a conversation with her. So it is through that I reached out to her, and here we are having this conversation.
Very interesting.
So the article that I shared was headlined "Two-Step CBI Technique Totally Camouflages True Identity, a Nightmare for Compliance Officers." That was the headline, and it's an article that was shared on the 14th of September, so it's very fresh. And it says, money launderers, career white-collar criminals, terrorist financiers, and intelligence agents have been of late using what we call the two-step CBI technique to effectively conceal the true identity from compliance officers conducting due diligence inquiries at account opening or law enforcement agencies investigating financial crime. It appears to be a nearly foolproof tactic of those who must present an alias that cannot be broken, which then enables them to operate with impunity in the financial sector without being made, without being identified, without being recognized for who they are, essentially. The technique though involves significant amount of trouble, has the benefit of being undetectable. So what happens? Now there's a two-step thing, and I just want to share that before I allow my guest to come in here. It says, one, the applicant obtains a CBI passport, Citizens by Investment passport. And we sell these things, right? and citizenship from one of the less expensive East Caribbean states, of which we are one, such as the Commonwealth of Dominica. Certain corrupt senior officials are bribed to ensure that the name, date of birth, place of birth are all fictitious and created solely for the passport. The personal identification documents in the file at the CBI unit's office all confirm the bogus identity, including but not limited to birth certificate, driver's license, voter's registration card, and utility bills. Any inquiry will only result in the investigator finding the counterfeit identity. So that's one. And that is done through the acquisition of a CBI passport and citizenship of one of these Eastern Caribbean states, like the Commonwealth of Dominica and very likely Grenada. Two, the next thing is the applicant, now armed with that new name and everything, applies to one of the European countries where there's visa-free access from countries like ours, somewhere in what is called the Schengen zone. Do I get the pronunciation correct? It's spelled Schengen, as well as other countries that we have that kind of relationship with. So with that being the case, I want to start off by asking our guest to give us a definition of what is money laundering? What kind of activity qualifies as money laundering? Ms. Willis.
Okay, first of all, what you're discussing, you've gone straight to deal with threats to small economies.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about the Citizen by Investment program. And to make the man on the street understand specifically what you're talking about, yes, they need to understand what money laundering is.
Mm-hmm.
At this time, the governments around the world is trying to make the financial system a paperless society, to stop us using cash. Because basically, that is money laundering. Money laundering cash. Because money laundering, sorry, you've changed your photo, so you've just put me off, Mr. Paul. Money laundering is used to describe turning dirty money into clean money. So what I'm trying to say, and I've written it down here, trying to make it easy for the man on the street to understand. Money laundering is the process of making money earned from criminal activity appear to be from a legitimate source. So the criminal activities would be drugs, prostitution, bribery, human trafficking, and of course the 21st century terrorist activities. The monies would be obtained from there. And so that's dirty money. For it to go to through our financial system, you have to make it clean. One way a criminal does that is to deposit small sums of money into the banking system. That way it's undetected. You're putting $500 here, $1,000 here. No one notices it. But when you're putting tens of thousands of dollars in cash, someone's going to say, hold on, that person's a baker. How come they're earning so much money? So that it becomes noticeable. It also becomes noticeable when the criminal invests the money into other crime to hide it. That is very simple tax evasion. And that's laundering money another way. Now, the types of business that a criminal uses to launder their money. Used car dealerships, taxi services, restaurants. Restaurants tend to crop up all the time because basically cash is passing hands all the time. So basically, those are the ways that a criminal gets rid of their dirty money and launders it and makes it into clean. So that goes on to the process of how it's done. There's a three-way process. That is where you place the money into the system.
Mm-hmm.
So you're moving the cash from its source and you place it into circulation into a financial institution, a bank, insurance. You're hiding the money. I've got an example here. You buying assets. What would you buy an asset with all that cash? Paintings, used cars. You getting my drift?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So the man on the street, he's very innocent. He's there earning his $200, $300 cash. But the criminal now, he has his tens of thousands. So a man on the street will go to the bank. He wants to put his 200. And the bank says, no, you have to use check. He gets upset because he's looking at him. But it's the big criminal now with the large amounts of money. But the poor man on the street, he's getting caught up in the big criminals because he needs his cash. He doesn't need a checkbook. So I hope our listeners can understand when they're getting very upset that they want to use cash, but it's for these reasons why the banking institutions have all these rules and regulations to prevent the laundering of these money.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned that aspect of things because as I remember it, you know, you could have just walked into a bank and say you want to open an account, you put in a few dollars and you, as you go along, you put in your savings. If it's a $10, you can put in a $20 as the case may be. No, the small man wants to open an account. He has to have 2 IDs. He has to have proof of address. He has to have source of income, you know. And some of these people, they live from day to day. The money that they get, you know, is when they do a little job here and a little job there. There's no paper trail really as to them being paid, as to how the finances are going and that kind. So it makes it really difficult for the ordinary person as a consequence of all of these white-collar crimes, it makes it very difficult now for these regular people, the person who's doing a day work, the person who works doing the bushing, the person who works on the estate, the person who does some domestic work somewhere and want to save $2. It makes it so difficult for them now to be able to start a bank account, to be able to save a pittance, really.
Right. So that is very important for them to understand. If they understand, then there'll be less trouble. So a lot of this, what's happening, is education.
And that's why one of the reasons why I felt it necessary for us to speak about that here today. So that being the case, we have a greater appreciation as to what qualifies as money laundering.
Good.
What that being the case, and we've just spoken about some of the local conditions that the regular man has to go through in order to establish a bank account. What are some of the international regulations that are out there, that's been established in order to help mitigate against the prospects of money laundering?
Right, you're talking about the international standards now.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about FATWA. That is the Financial Action Task Force. They were established that's the world. I'm not talking about Grenada now, we're talking about the world.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they were established in July 1989 by the G7 summit in Paris.
Okay.
They were there, basically, they started off to discuss and develop measures to combat money laundering. And out of that, now to this present day, it's a worldwide organization. It's global, because it's not just money laundering, it's terrorism as well. So FATWA, what I understand it as, which is acronym, I says TATF, FATF, the Financial Action Task Force. They're a body now, 21st century. They're a government body that sets international standards that aim to prevent illegal activities. So countries worldwide, they adhere to the task force's recommendations. Grenada also is required to adhere to their recommendations. And as a result of the task force, Grenada has adopted anti-money laundering legislation. And this is where the proceeds of crime acts around the world come from, because of these international task force. Okay?
Yep.
So every country, America, US, Barbados, Grenada, Jamaica, worldwide, they all adhere to these recommendations. I think the recommendations by the task force is being issued yearly. And I think the last one was 2018. I cannot recall. I need to have a look, okay?
Okay.
So the task force has implemented recommendations that businesses in every country, certain businesses must adhere to the Proceeds of Crime Act. For example, lawyers, banks, financial institutions, they're required, because of the laundering of criminal funds and terrorist activities, countries worldwide must adhere to it. Okay?
Yep.
So I explained about the little man on the street and also the big organizations. If they have to use the banking systems, they must adhere to specific rules and regulations for them to access their money, obtain money, exchange money. Everyone now must adhere to these regulations, because no matter what recommendations you do and government implement, the criminals now are getting very sophisticated. And one of the biggest lucrative way of laundering money is property. So that's where we're referring to I think that's where you're referring to the CBI, Citizen by Investment. Because of course, individuals, when they're subscribing to that, they are purchasing properties in the countries where they are obtaining that particular passports. So that is when there are threats to that economy.
So that being said, I came across a piece that was written out there, and it says, among its other negative socio-economic effects, money laundering transfers economic power from the market, government, and citizens to criminals. Furthermore, the sheer magnitude of the economic power that accrues to criminals from money laundering has a corrupting effect on all elements of society. Can you expound on that and, share how something like that can happen, and what are some of the implications and the overriding effects of these kind of developments?
Only thing I can say, greed. The more money you have, the more money you want. I say corruption. That breeds it as well. Because when a criminal has vast amounts of money, for instance, with drugs, they wield the power to affect economies, individuals, institutions. What's that saying? Money walks or money talks, bullshit?
No, bullshit. Money talks, bullshit walks.
I see Mr. Khalid's laughing. But it's true, am I right?
I have a question for you though. Pablo, if you allow me here.
Yes, you may come in.
Here. Now, the Ghanaian society, we grew up doing susu and raised probably $5,000, $6,000 cash money over a period of time. How would the financial investigating unit, right, handle the local man who does his susu? And once you go to the bank and deposit, I get my susu hand today for $5,000. Doesn't use a check. The person that has the susu doesn't give him a check. Even the person who controls the susu have to deposit the money in the bank. You will give him a check for the amount of money that he received from the partner hand, right? How do you look at that as not being money laundering? Because the person bypassed the bank. Okay, I'm not putting my $100 in the bank. I'm going to be paid to Raphael as the person controls the susu. Every week I give $100 to like 10 of us, 20 of us give Raphael $100. And every week somebody get $5,000. Okay? And that person takes that money to the bank. Now the bank wants to know where to get that money from. Is susu ingredient considered a money laundering?
In the UK, Jamaica, we call the Susu partner.
Partner, yeah. That's why I use the term partner, yeah.
So all of us from the diaspora, we know about this because when we all leave our respective countries, that's how we had to start. That's the only way we could survive with our partner and our Susu.
Right.
And of course, with money laundering, there has to be a cap where the banks can say comfortably, oh, this person has got this money from there. They have a lot of regulations, which I was involved in the UK, where the banks have to know their customer. They have to do training. And I believe this is where, because it is long known, the Susu, the partner, this is how we all survived. And yes, it does fall under the money laundering because you can only safely put a certain amount in the bank without having to provide a trail. So if you have more than 10 people in a Susu and a partner, and the amount is much more, it will be much more than $1,000 because nowadays what much you can buy. So basically some Susus are 5,000-10,000 because there's a large amount of individuals in that Susu, giving it weekly. It's their last bit of money because they're saving up. And the person who is the master, who's the one that you're giving the Susu they're your lifeline. Not everybody knows who throws a Susu hand. It's secret.
Right.
So now, because of what the big criminals are doing, again, the poor man on the street are suffering.
Right.
But then the banks and the government, they have no choice. They need to put regulations in to cap a certain amount.
Okay.
But to me, we live in a place like Grenada, Barbados, St. Kitts. Everybody knows each other. I'm sure there's some sort of regulations that they could put in place. I'm a lawyer. To deal with Susus, with partners, so it does not get caught within the money laundering. Because I think these regulations were put in place for the big criminals, not for the little man on the street. But unfortunately now, it's the times now that government's got to consider the little man on the street and how to deal with their Susu, because a Susu is a hard-earned money.
Yeah, it's hard-earned money, exactly. And you know, Hudson George on the other line, he says Susu is the original name. It is the oldest method of banking since during ancient Egypt. So one can understand why it filters into the Caribbean community and West Indian community as a whole. But given all of that, the government, most of them who have no politician parents, had educated them through the accumulation of financial funds that was Susu owned money, Susu saved money, to educate them, to send them to high school, to own their education. So I mean, as you being involved in this, I know in Canada here, you cannot go in the bank with deposit $4,000 as an ordinary person, just going and deposit $4,000 without a business account, right? Cash, right? They want to know where you get it from, and to fill in a certain form for that purpose. Is there such a thing in Grenada right now that someone goes to the bank and have to fill in a form to explain where they get the money from?
Of course. I think it's the trail, it's the money trail.
Right.
So you need to put down where you get the money from, who it's going to, and what it's going to be spent for. I even had to do it yesterday, which I thought was, this is just a personal thing. I'm thinking, I'm just buying this. Why do you want to know? But then, as I was saying, the criminals now are very sophisticated. And it's just unfortunate that the little man on the street is getting caught.
Right.
Grenada and the islands, a lot of islands in the Caribbean, the man on the street they still need their cash. It's impossible to have a cashless society when you're buying vegetables, when you're selling vegetables. So there must be a way for the governments of the day to consider how we are going to deal. I'm saying we because we're lawyers. Individuals are coming in every day asking about this also. It's a very important topic of the day now that must be addressed. Right. There's not such a thing as hiding your money under the bed anymore.
Yeah. Can you point to, well, thank you very much for that intervention here, Brother John, and I expect that there are many people out there who would be interested in that aspect of things, because I know the Susu is very much present with us. It is something that's being practiced still very much among people, and that's how many of our people are able to save a little something, in order to address particular issues. That being said, are there any other overriding impacts that you can indicate that this whole issue of money laundering can have on small economies like ours?
What do you mean impact? Bad or good?
Whatever, any way that it can, can it help us, or can it be something that retards the growth of our economy, something that impacts on us, whether in terms of the reputation of the country, or in terms of affecting the kind of transactions that our established financial institutions can get into, the kind of arrangements that we can get into with other international banking institutions and so.
Well, we are fortunate to have the Eastern Caribbean Bank. They regulate most banking systems in the Eastern Caribbean, and they issue guidelines from time to time to the banks. But then saying that, because of the position of Grenada in the Caribbean, and the closeness of it to Venezuela, United States, and it's quite easy for Europe, there is a problem with drugs, money laundering, smuggling of narcotics, which is organized crime. That has actually been highlighted in many jurisdictions in the Caribbean, because these illegal real estate and cars, that has a significant effect. As I've said before, purchase or lease land and they dispose.
Oh, well, we seem to be having some technical difficulties with our guests. I don't know if it's her connection, and we seem to have lost her temporarily. Um, oh, she seemed to be coming back. If we can take a short break here, Mr. Technical Operator, my guess, if you can hold it a bit, we take a short break, and I hope that we can get this sorted out. We go back to that song by Sparrow. Yes, these good citizens. Oh, she's back. All right.
I don't know
All
what
right.
happened.
So let's flow. We're not sure. We're not sure what happened there. But are you ready to continue?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, she's frozen up. She's frozen up again. So if you take that break and see if we can if that can be sorted out. These good citizens are the architect of economic slavery.
When does someone really become a good citizen? I'd like to know for sure. Why, when the ordinary man disagrees with the establishment, they call it treason. Why should they persecute a brother for seeking black power? Don't they know a blind man could see that this is blatant hypocrisy? The real traitors and them are all high in society. Yet the government protecting all of them and penalizing you and me. And in a million different ways they violating law. It's the same good no good bastards who oppress the poor. They sell in black market, making excess profit, paying a starvation salary. These good citizens are the architects of economic slavery.
Yes, so if we can continue our conversation with our guest, she's back and not frozen as she was earlier on. And Ms. Willis, are you hearing us?
Yes, I'm hearing you.
Okay, so we were speaking about that kind of overriding impact that money laundering can have on our economy, apart from the issues relating to our SUSU, the kind of impact it can have on us and our relationship with other international financial institutions. Continue.
Okay. So I must say that Grenada is not a regional finance. It would seriously have problems with money laundering. As I said before, central bank, tongue-tied with that, that is the supervisory authority for Grenadian commercial banks. Okay, so
Yes, and we having it again. Our guest, there seemed to be a problem with the connection with our guest, and it's frozen again. She's gone off screen one more time, and I don't know how much how much more that we can do to ensure that she remains with us and be able to continue the conversation. I was, in the meantime, while we try to regain that communication. Miss Willis, you back? You hearing
Yes,
us? Yes, so can you continue? Let's see what we can get out of here. You know, see what we can get out of you in the next few minutes.
Okay, as I was saying before, Grenada is not a regional financial center. That's when there'll be a lot of problems. Grenada it hasn't got a casino yet, or there's no internet gaming sites. Those sort of things would be problems for a small economy like Grenada. Okay. But as I said before, investors through the CBI, and that's just incidental of it, they can purchase or lease privately owned land and dispose or transfer it. That's a of laundering money. But Grenada has the Alien Landholding License Act and the Property Transfer Act. So the government can regulate things and know about things that are happening there. And of course, that's also because investors can hold state land. They can grant it or lease it, which is quite worrying. But I'm talking quickly, trying to get everything in. And I must tell the audience, Grenada does have an anti-money laundering commission.
Okay.
And they started registration of businesses, well, the proceeds of crime legislation. This was in January last year. Although they have had, because I've been reading it quite closely, and it has Mr. Nazim Burke, when he was finance minister, that came through. That was the Proceeds of Crime Act of 2012. But it's been updated quite a lot since then. So basically, hundreds of entities have had to register since last year for the anti-money laundering legislation. Okay, so the commission has put structures together to regulate these entities. Okay, and there's another worrying trend for criminal activities. That's the non-profit organizations. A lot of them are springing up here, there, and everywhere. If individuals don't know, non-profit organizations, they're type of charities. They attract funding, grant funding, quite a lot. And that's a source. Those organizations, they're a source for laundering money. I've got here, now the law has made it mandatory for those organizations to be registered. Also, I've said to you, lawyers and law firms, they're supposed to be registered, right? So Grenada has enacted laws to combat money laundering. And of course, you have mentioned the financial intelligence
unit.
Okay. The players at the commission, a lawyer's view, it's the normal players are a part of the sector. It should be for businesses, I believe, should be involved, but it's just the ruling party of the day are involved in the commission. Okay.
Wait, could you clarify that? You're saying that the people who are involved with the commission, there are not many independent operators within the commission, or it's restricted to the ruling ruling administration?
Well, this is just my view. I've looked at it just for the purposes of coming onto the show. And basically, who we are, it's the chairman is the Attorney General. The head of the Financial Intelligence Unit is the Deputy Chairman.
Okay.
Several permanent secretaries are on the board.
Okay.
And also, of course, the DPP and the Commissioner of Police.
Okay.
So you see, there's the business sector is not involved.
So based on what you've just said here, and if you just take us back a bit, the essence of that unit is to do what? Is to regulate what? In fact, they are the police for what? Because it's a policing responsibility, to use the term loosely.
Well, it's they regulate it's the Anti-Money Laundering Commission.
Okay. Okay. So are you saying that an entity like that, what do you think, or who do you think are the ideal participants or the ideal membership? What do you think should be the ideal construct of such an entity?
The idea would be a cross-section of society. As I've said, the Attorney General, permanent secretaries, the Accountant General. They're the ruling party of the day. They're all appointed by the Prime Minister, I'm assuming. I could be wrong.
Okay. Brother John,
having saying that, I must say the vision of the Commission is to develop an effective national system to combat money laundering, of course, and terrorist financing. Okay.
Brother John, I find you looking as if you want to chime in here.
Yeah, I want to ask a question here. The Anti-Money Laundering Commission and the Financial Investigation Unit, what's the difference between these two organizations?
Well, the intelligence unit, they're there to investigate suspicious transactions and so forth.
Okay.
The commission is to, as it says, develop legislation and procedures to combat anti-money laundering.
I don't know if you have any idea, any answers to this question. I'm going to ask you, I'll throw it out there anyways. The commission, the Anti-Money Laundering Commission and the Financial Unit, how many people from one unit is on the same commission? Is the Attorney General is also part of the Financial Investigative Unit, and Mr. Pierre, is he also on the commission and on the same unit as well?
You want me to say there's a conflict of interest?
You're a lawyer.
I wonder that you put words in my mouth.
I'm on the other side of the fence. I'm not leading I'm trying to lead you on, lead something here, to lead to something.
Mr. Kelly, you're trying to clarify
yes,
as to whether you have people who are serving on all of these different entities.
in this, yeah, the both and the both the
Right.
both entities.
Okay. Ms. Willis?
I think that is what I was trying to say at first. It's
Yes.
always the same players.
Okay.
So who policing the police then in that case? So who's come when you come back to the money that the money laundering scheme, the CBI program? Where does that money go? Is that goes into the treasury, or it goes into a special commission? And who oversees that money? Is there a specific guideline for how that money is used from the commission?
I wouldn't know that. I think you'd have to ask one of
I
the
tried the question out there, so probably could be answered. Somebody.
Well, what I can tell you is there was recently, there's also an article that came out sometime in August that spoke to the fact that the government of Grenada, having had the experience from the shrimp farm issue, and we know all about the shrimp farm, where this supposed investor used that CBI project as a means to raise significant sums of money, some $50+ million that never reached the country, and so on. So they've changed the legislation, they've amended the legislation so that any monies that are raised through that medium now goes into a particular fund, you know, here, so that to lessen the chances, of such investors, you know, doing as they please with the money, with the proceeds that are raised in this regard. Another thing that they've done to reportedly is that they've amended the legislation to put a cap on the amount of money that can be raised, because what prevailed before is that once that person has been given the authorization by the CBI program to go out there and raise money for the particular investment project, there was no regulation, there was no one supervising how much money they actually raised. So the project might cost $20 million, but they will just go out there and just continue raising money even after they have raised the amount of money that was actually required for the project. So they were just living off of the proceeds of the monies that's been raised out there, because reportedly the individual who raised the money for the shrimp farm is now living in Dubai. And the question is being raised as to whether our government, the authorities here, really, if there's anybody who received any kickbacks from it, and whether the administration would be looking to place criminal charges and so against the individual, or to whether our country can be faced, you know, with claims from those persons who would have invested in that project and would have lost their money. So that is still very much up in the air, but it seems like if the administration, based on that experience, has now amended the law, you know, so to put some regulations on that, you know, so that's as it is presently. Mr. Kelly, to answer your question, anything else that you want to interject here at this point in time, Mr. Kelly?
I'm watching some of the comments here, and I'm very concerned about this financial operation, you know, because it tends somehow, somewhere along the line, that it is men in business here for their own interests, you know. Who's to stop who from laundering the money? You know, the commission is set up, and it's in January 2019, right? And that was set up by a commission by Nazim Buck and so on back then.
No, I said, sorry, I've got to interrupt you there. The Proceeds of Crime Act.
Yes, yeah.
He's the one, when he was finance minister.
Yeah, he put that in place. But no, that is okay. That was then. But now,
and the present administration are working on that.
When you say working on it, what are you trying to do with it now?
Well, they've issued amendments
to it
and guidelines to the Proceeds of Crime.
So they're amending that now. Okay, it doesn't fit their fancies, I guess. Oh, wow.
I'm still practicing here. I cannot comment.
I know. I just you know, it's just pushing the question out there so people can go search for themselves. You know, it's like I don't expect you to answer the question. You know, you are lawyers, so you know when you quote me will say something and then redraw. So I redraw right now. I redraw this thing. I redraw. Your Honor, I redraw that one.
Yes. Accepted.
So with all that's been said here, and with some of the things we've experienced, and some of the things that are happening now, and so on, and the concern that's just been raised as regards the construct of some of these entities that are supposed to be the watchdog of these financial transactions and so. As an attorney yourself, as a lawyer, as some, you know, as a legal person, what are some of the recommendations you think are appropriate in order to put us in the best place to guard against these kind of operations and so?
You've asked a very difficult question.
I know. I know. I know.
Wow.
Well, to me, really, the makeup should be different. Each player has their hands in all different. They wear a different hat for many different things. Money laundering is very, very serious. It affects the structure, the system. It goes to the heart of the economy. So the players of the commission are very important individuals. Criminals are getting very sophisticated. So the law has to move in the pace. It's got to move faster to combat these individuals. And for an economy to grow, you have to safeguard many areas, many institutions within the country. That needs to be tightened and spread it across different players rather than the same players. Am I making myself clear without getting myself into too much problems?
Well,
I think you're doing well.
I guess that part of it as to yourself getting into too much problems, you have to know where you are going to draw the line. I mean, we are receptive, right? Us being here, we are receptive to anything that will shed light or will empower us, would enable the ordinary man to appreciate and to understand what's really happening with our institutions, what's happening with the regulators, and how it can impact on the daily lives. But you, the person who's in the in that spot, and
Firing line.
you have to know you're in the firing line. You have to know what you can see.
Yes. I think that there needs to be more education. They need to educate the people more. There needs to be more talking.
Okay.
Breaking it down so that people can understand what is going on. I think knowledge is the key, because if you don't know, ignorance is not bliss.
Sure, right.
We work very hard for our money. We need to know that it's safe.
Right. Make sure it's make sure it's in the hands of the right people, not criminals. Not you can't put the cat towards the cheese, right?
That is correct. So it is very important. We're laughing here, we're joking,
but it's serious.
but it's a very serious area.
Yeah. And
Yes, it is very serious
Yeah.
because earlier on you made the point about non-governmental agencies,
Mhm.
right, as being an avenue for money laundering. And we know as small developing countries that many of the rural communities and rural people have benefited from non-governmental interventions, that would have brought to the fore certain economic ventures that provided, whether it is housing or whether it is job opportunities, people getting into certain productive sectors, whether it is addressing a particular health issue or a community facility and stuff like that. We've seen rural communities, vulnerable communities benefiting from NGO intervention and NGO financing. So, what kind of, how does, being that we're in that place right now, what kind of restriction or in what way do you think that these kind of regulations now can restrict NGOs from being able to provide that kind of support to these kind of communities? And
Well,
what kind of impact can it have?
it's not really restricting individuals, but you need to know who are the players behind these non-governmental organizations, because it's non-governmental. The government is not supposed to be involved in these organizations.
Okay.
So, but hold on.
They are charities. That means they should be separate from the government.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. Yes. Go ahead, Mr. Kelly.
While that is true, and the monitoring of the monies, where it coming from, it could be again money, like you said, the money coming from outside sources to the NGOs could be set up in Grenada just to launder the money. So that's the reason why probably it will be used to monitor the source of the money and the transfer of the money. So it may be $100 million coming to NGO A, but at 25,000 left with NGO A, but the other monies goes outside, just use a transition point to transfer the money into other activities. So,
well, it's not even that as well. A lot of NGOs, they do fundraising. That's cash.
Right. So, but what my point here though?
There's UK, the US, Canada. When you give some of your salary to charities, it's a tax incentive, is it not?
Yes, a tax write-off. You get yeah. For example, I could go to an organization and ask them for money, for assistance, and give them a letter in kind for the amount value that they give to us. For example, if a church, for example, I had the opportunity of doing a church one time, and the material cost was $40,000, right? And they didn't have that kind of money. It's a small church. What I asked them to do is to give me a letter to take to the supply chain of Home Depot and so on, Lowe's, and give them the letter, right, to supply the amount of material that they needed, right? And they got the material. And you have to give those companies a letter in kind, and they will then present that with a tax filing, so they get back.
Right, yes. But there's a lot of instances where there'll be cash.
Yes. So what do you do with the cash?
You can go and give $50,000 cash to a church.
Yes.
And they don't ask where that money's coming from.
Okay, I want right there. I could stick a nail right there. Many years ago, a Nigerian came to my church. He used to come to church in a while. Then he stopped, and after about 6 months to a year, within a time, he showed up again. I want you to donate some money to the church. But he came in with a paper, a blank. It seemed to be a blank piece of paper, size of a US dollar. When he put it up in the line, he has everything that the US dollar has in it. All he needed was a US two US dollars to put back and forth, put in a solution, and voila, you have yourself an American dollar.
Okay.
Right? And that is another thing that have to be brought to the attention. Because I tried, I see him did it, and I took it out to the bank to check and see if it's real. It passed the fraud test in the bank under the light, under the pen. I brought it to another store. I even brought the grader, and I showed it to a police officer. I brought it in the bank, and it passed the test. I still have it somewhere here. So this could be done, and they will make that money right in front of you. Without coming in, yes. In some Nigerian folks, I see it happen before my eyes. You know, so that's another way that money could be laundered into the country as well.
Yeah, there's many. As I said, criminals are getting very sophisticated.
Very sophisticated. Yeah. So they could make the money before your very eyes. So the government have to be very careful of how these things done.
Yes.
You know, but my main concern in Greater, however, is I want to ask you this before Pablo come back in. Oops, I lost my people. How prevalent is money laundering in Grenada? How prevalent it is to be raising a concern in Grenada at this point?
Is that to me or to Pablo?
To you.
Well, it's prevalent worldwide. You don't have that. You have cases in court, of course, but it's not something that's consistent.
Right.
But that doesn't mean the country should not be alerted to this.
Right. Okay, just checking.
Okay.
All right.
As I've said before, the Grenada's position globally, it's a sort of gateway to the West.
Right.
So the government has to be alert. There's worldwide human trafficking is a problem. Drugs is a problem.
Right.
Those are the high risk for money laundering.
Right.
And of course, but thankfully, Grenada doesn't need to worry about it. Terrorism.
Right.
As yet. Hopefully not. Been raised in the UK, it's not nice. So
I know.
it's a good. Grenada's in a good place.
Right. You mentioned earlier on three places where money can be laundered easily: through car dealership, taxi services, and restaurants.
Yes.
Do you think we have that is in Grenada with the taxi services that could be done there? Because most of the taxi owners own their own private taxis, right?
Basically, it's anywhere where your services is done in cash.
Right.
So I just highlighted those two, but there's many places.
Right.
Vendors, they do in cash.
All right. Thank you very much, Pablo.
So basically, that is why the banks and the world over, they would like to move to a cashless society.
Yeah.
The man on the street, they need cash. It's a very important commodity for men on the street. They need their coins, they need their paper money. A checkbook or a card is useless.
In the marketplace.
Yeah.
Correct.
There is a concern that with all of these financial regulations, it is impacting in a more significant way on the developing countries, in that there is a flight of capital from those countries, and it's not having that kind of effect on the more developed countries, that the more developed countries are actually benefiting from these restricting regulations, these restricting financial regulations than the developing countries. Because as a consequence of the regulations that countries like ours are forced to put in place. There is a flight of capital. Those people who would have chosen to do banking with our institutions and now moving the capital back into the banking institutions of the more developed countries. Can you speak to that?
I think not relation to money laundering, maybe in relation to the taxes are so severe in the banking system. But I don't think as a personal, not even as a lawyer, I think the money laundering situation is more vast in the developing countries because they've got more different avenues where the criminal can tap into.
Okay.
But again, saying that they can afford more sophisticated systems to trap the criminals than our countries. But then again, our countries, our developing countries, could see who those players are because the citizens wouldn't be moving those vast sums on such large scales continuously.
Okay, I hear you. I hear you. So essentially, you are saying that for that level of money laundering to take place, there must be, or there's more likely to be, or it has to be facilitated by, as the article I referred to earlier on, that spoke to the two-step CBI technique that totally camouflages true identity and is a nightmare for compliance officers. It has to be, and in which they made the point that certain corrupt senior officials have to be bribed to ensure that the name, date of birth, and place and birth are all fictitious. So you saying that?
Sorry, can I interrupt you there?
Yes, go ahead.
I have not looked into the CBI, but has somebody who has worked in financial crime for so many years, and especially in the banking system, there are certain regulations that banks must follow, institutions must follow. And the most important is KYC. That's know your customer.
Okay.
So you're saying that these individuals can launder money because the banks don't know who they are. That does not sound right. For a bank to deal with a client, they must know that customer. They must know where their money's coming from and where their money's going to. That is the fundamental, goes to the heart of the money laundering requirements. So for you to be able to launder money or to be able to go through the system blindly, that means that these individuals are not known. I find that very hard.
Okay. Okay.
I don't know anything. I have not looked. You'd have to ask the government about that. But there's supposed to be transparency. Okay? You're supposed to know who these individuals are, how much money's put in, where the money's come from. That goes to the heart of the anti. That's why it says anti, to prevent the money laundering. So how can you prevent money laundering if you don't know the person's name, where their money's coming from? That means you're giving them a blank check to do whatever they want to.
The issue I was raising here is based on what the article said, that certain corrupt senior officials are bribed to ensure that that, that transfer of identity takes place, so that the person has a new name, a new date of birth, a place of birth, that, and all of that is fictitious, and that any search, right, will only come up with that information, which then allows that person to get into transactions, to get into dealings, and to be able to move monies and so, without going through the kind of scrutiny, right, that they would otherwise have been subjected to get into the kind of relationship. Because if you're able to bribe officials and so, then that person now can become a conduit through such money.
That is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
Because
through
if
such monies are moved.
you have to bribe somebody for you to be able to get through all these regulations.
Okay.
And remember what I says? Money
Yes.
talk.
Yes, money talk and bullshit one. So yeah,
What?
it does, it does, it does. Mm. Well, we're coming up on 4 o'clock, and if is there, are there any parting words that you would like to leave with our listeners? That the regular people who are likely to face those challenges, to be affected in one way or another. And because as we said in the beginning, right, as I said in my opening remarks, many people do not really appreciate the relationship between the the access to certain things, the access to the use of certain institutions, the access to the services that we depend on from government, and so on. They do not appreciate the relationship between these things and some of these broader issues relating to money laundering and so on. Any parting words, any parting remarks that you would like to share, on that issue, to that can be enlightening and that can be of help?
Only thing I can say, you work very hard for your money.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever you put it, whatever you do in it, make sure you know where it's going to, what is going to happen to your money. And make sure you do not read the large print. Get a magnifying glass. The small print is the most important.
True. Well, I think that rounds it off beautifully. I want to say thanks to you, Miss Herricia Willis, for accepting the invitation to be here with us, taking time off what I no doubt is a busy schedule for somebody with your kind of responsibilities. Um, and for joining us here this evening on the comfort zone. I trust that the information that you shared here will go a long way in enlightening many of our listeners and our viewers here this evening. And we are going to be sharing that more broadly, because we have established a YouTube channel. So from here, this will be uploaded on YouTube, and it's usually shared with different people, whether it's in their WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger, and so they will have access to it. And I trust that your intervention here will help to enlighten people on this issue. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me, and thank you again.
Thank
And
you.
as I say, I hope my short words could assist anyone. And please stay away from these Ponzi schemes and everything. Guard your money. You've worked for it very hard.
Thank you very much. So that's it. That's going to be a wrap on the comfort zone for today. I want to thank those who joined us, those who made comments in the shout box, and so on. I hope that we can get to the point where we can facilitate your calls from time to time. I hope my technical operator can, because that's one of the things that people have been asking me about, Mr. Technical Operator, you know. So I hope that for some of these programs we'll be able to do that. People get a special, you know, sense of motivation and feel more, you know, a part of the function when we operate in that way. So thank you. All right. Yes. All right. So going forward in promoting the event, I will be able to share that number and indicate to people that they can call and so on and so forth. Yeah. So thank you once again, Ms. Willis, and thank you again, Mr. Caliste, for having offered me the option to be able to be doing what I'm doing here. I never anticipated that I would be, you know, out here doing a show like that, being, I mean, people stopping me in St. George's and ask me, hey, you have your own radio operation. Some of them knew me doing the Heartbeat program on a Sunday. And that has stopped from since January. My last program was January the 19th. And people are still saying to me, hey, I haven't heard you on the program in a while and so on, you know, and I've had to say, well, you know, I'm doing something different now. And some will ask, so you have your own radio operation? I have to say, no, this is Mr. Caliste, Mr. John Caliste, that has afforded me the opportunity, you know, because getting such an offer, you know, being offered such an opportunity is, I have to really say thank you for it, to be given that international platform. Raphael Paul Pablo is on the international platform, the World Wide Web, speaking on a variety of issues. So thank you for having me, and thank you for affording me that opportunity.
Man, you know, they say your gift will make way for you, you know, and as I said before on this show and any other shows, is that I have an eye for talent. You know, I look for people they're pregnant with skills, with gift. And when you came on the show as a guest, for a couple of times you've been there, I said, this brother is special. There's something different about everybody else. He needs to have his own show. So I contemplated a prayer about it, and I said, I called you one evening, I was driving home. I said, let me call Pablo, asking if you really want to do the show. And he said, let me think about it. You know, let me go about it. But that's what I do. I try to find people. I see people all the time, and I listen to the conversation people having. And people speak a lot of things, and they probably don't realize how much they're pregnant with stuff to bring out, to give to the world. And I couldn't do everything. I do not know the people that you know, the contact that you have. There's a lot of people that, they have a lot of things to do. And I said to people all the time, you know, if you need to do something, if you have something to do, don't be afraid. Ask, speak, because somebody's going to be listening. And I happen to listen to you, and I know that you're greatness in you. So here you are with your own show. And there's more to come for Gem FM Grenada Incorporated. Yes? Gem FM Grenada will be big.
Thank you. I want to say before I depart, I want to say thanks to those persons who reached out to me after last week's show, because we had Ashida Charles last week, and I'm telling you, she was on fire. And I've had quite a number of messages from people, and I mean, I could call one name. When Ricardo Kings Douglas messages me and says, this show, that program was really on the ball and so on and so forth, you know, and I had to say, well, with a guest like Ashida Charles, you can't go wrong, you must look good, you know what I mean? So thank you, Mr. Ashida Charles, for coming through for me.
That's what you do. You pick quality people. You know, look today, another quality person again. OPQ. Only quality people. OQP. Only quality people.
Only quality people, right? Yes, man. Only quality people. Hey, you remind me of somebody.
Yes. So yeah, man.
You remind me of Mr. Les Brown.
Mr. Les Brown.
Only quality people.
Yeah, we educating to liberate. Educating to liberate. Right here in Gem FM. That's our motto. Education is liberation. And the more you know, the more you're liberated. So, you know, thank you again, Herricia. It's a real pleasure to have you a second time around on Gem FM. And
thank you very much.
I hope Pablo could bring you back to deal with the refugee crisis that we have in Grenada. I hope there'll be a next show.
I'll be back. Don't worry. I'll definitely be back.
Yeah, to talk about this refugee. We have refugees in Grenada from Africa. When we see all life matter, Black life matter, we have been locked up our brothers and sisters from Africa in Grenada.
Very serious.
Very problem.
Serious.
So hope Pablo could set you up with that, and we could come back here next Saturday and do that one.
I will do.
So Pablo will follow up with you on that.
Okay.
Okay.
So, Brother Callis,
Yes.
you
I'm
know,
gonna play a
wrap
song.
up, but, you know, that song just resonates today, you know,
Yeah, I'll play it again.
with good citizens.
Good citizen. Sparrow is a genius, right?
Yes, man, he is, definitely. When does someone really become a good citizen?
I'd like to know for sure. Why when the ordinary man disagrees with the establishment, they call it treason? Why should they persecute a brother for seeking black power? Don't they know a blind man could see that this is blatant hypocrisy? The real traitors and them are all high in society. Yet the government protecting all of them and penalizing you and me. And in a million different ways they violate the law. It's the same good no good bastards who oppress the poor. They say the black market making excess profit paying a starvation salary.
These good citizens are the architect of economic.
They say you have the right to criticize, but then you are victimized. And without any reason. Many a time you find yourself politically paralyzed by that same good citizen. Yet these fakes and phonies enjoy a long life of luxury while they spread corruption throughout the country. When they should be arrested, they're protected and respected in the society, and in a million different ways they violate the law. It's the same good no good bastards who oppress the poor with a false declaration, tax evasion, defrauding customs duty.
These good citizens are the architect of economic.
In lust and greed and fraud and strife, they specialize. Double deals, they idolize. If you're brave enough to open your mouth and criticize, one time you are ostracized and
Then you are victimized.
still they go unpunished and unaccused of any crime, while on the backs of the ordinary man these vultures climb. They use the riches and the power, make a mockery of the law, and have the law protect them same time. In a million different ways they violate.
Brother John, you any awards, boy?
Huh?
Brother John, you any awards, boy?
I am.
I say you ain't hear the kind of words in that song?
Yes. The man is out ahead of his time.
Man,
It's still and more relevant today than it was
I mean,
then.
check how relevant these words are to this dispensation.
That's what good Calypsonian Calypsos does. This morning, I was talking about this today and the Caribbean Connection show that
Right.
Calypsonian are literally people's spokesman. They are able to pen the voices of the people. You know, they don't have master's degree and so on, but they are storytellers. They watch what's going on and they pen it. They write their stories in songs and we listen to it. You know, and that's one of the reasons why the church didn't want it, because the church at the time wasn't black-run churches, it was white-run churches. So the establishment was attacked back then by the Calypsonians. And today, The establishment again is been targeted by the Calypsonians by the social and political commentaries. So they will ostracize you if you sing a song like that. They will ban your song on the radio. The same persons who was in the struggle against the white establishment are now in the hands of power and will put you under the heels. You know, so you will not reveal. You will not reveal
sometimes that's the only way they can get the words out.
Yes.
It's
a mobilization tool to mobilize people.
Yes.
You know, and so that the politician understands that. Like Pablo clearly says, those crooks and bastards and them keeping economic and occupational slavery. You know, the majority of us live in economic and occupational slavery by those same people. You know, they violate the law and the government protects them. You know, and they get involved in get to bear with them and lobby groups. Lobby with government. Look, I was watching the lady last week in the U.S. Senate questioning this gentleman about a drug that didn't do any good for the people, but he keep bringing up the price and making $5 million like pocket change for him. Every time the price go up, he get kickbacks. You know, but the drug is not working. But the drug keeps selling. You know, and they know it, but they're making money off it. You know, so that's the way it is. That's the way it is. All right, my friend.
Brother John, so before we leave, what's on talking point later?
Oh, tonight the Fort Judy situation is paramount. The brother want to talk about the child protection services and Mr. Trump fiasco, the US election. So these two topics for tonight on Jennifer.
All right, so.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. All the best.
Right.
Bye.
God bless.
All right.
All right.
Yes, bless you. Hey. Wow.
That was good.
Get out of your comfort zone. The fear that you're not confronting cannot take your life away. The game of life out there waiting for you to come out and play. I tell you, get out of your comfort zone. I know it takes plenty courage to start all over again, but patience and real perseverance could bring you positive gain. I tell you, get out of your comfort zone. Get out of your comfort zone.